All right, welcome back. Now, let's talk about some politics, especially the politics of Imo State. Now, Imo State Governor Okorocha is obviously not in the good books of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. It's not news that the outgoing governor, who was the candidate of the All Progressives Congress in the Imo West Senatorial Zone election, is yet to receive his certificate of return. Okorocha was announced winner of the polls, having polled 97,762 votes ahead of his closest rival, Jones Onyereri of People's Democratic Party, PDP, who had 68,117 votes. But then INEC has held on to his certificate on the grounds that the returning officer claimed to have declared him winner under duress. The outgoing governor, however, insists that he won the election, and since a winner has been announced, the electoral umpire has no right to withhold his certificate of return according to the laws governing elections in the country. Now, Okorocha has made several attempts with the hope of getting cleared by INEC, including meeting with President Muhammadu Buhari. He's also approached the Federal High Court in Abuja seeking an order compelling the commission to issue him a certificate of return. And shortly after that, Justice Taiwo, who was the presiding judge over the case, removed himself from the matter. Of course, that is after the other people involved in the matter had actually made accusations, now allegations against Justice Taiwo. The governor has now petitioned INEC, urging the chairman, Mahmoud Yakubu, to release the certificate of return without delay. But INEC has refused to budge. Joining me now to discuss this issue further is Libros Oshoma, who is, first of all, a lawyer and a political analyst. Libros, thank you very much for joining us. Isn't this strange that INEC would withhold the certificate of return? Of course, INEC has, and then INEC is not taking any action at all. It's the governor who had actually gone to court in the first place.
Excuse me. It's actually not strange because we might presume or think that it's strange because ordinarily we hardly see INEC.
Well, at least we've not seen anything like this.
Yes, INEC, maintain a strong position like this. Ordinarily, you would have expected INEC to budge to say, well, since
that whatever happens should go to the election petition tribunal.
Parties should go to the tribunal. But INEC wanting to maintain its integrity, and since pre the election,
but
INEC
this is where I accept, but this is where I have a problem with what INEC is doing. What is wrong? I mean, INEC has not been categorical on this. I mean, let's face it, and it doesn't help them. It doesn't help matters. I thought INEC would have said, look, yes, it's true that the returning officer said he declared the result under duress, but then what? Yeah, INEC only said so, withheld a certificate, and had not taken any action at all. Why not order the conduct of another election, or probably declare the other?
INEC can't do that since the candidate involved had approached the Federal High Court.
No, I'm saying even before the candidate approached, because I remember INEC had to set up,
exactly
before the candidate even approached the court.
Yeah, because once that happened,
an investigative committee.
Yes, once that happened, the returning officer is the man statutorily empowered, saddled with the responsibility to declare. And that same man had said, I am doing this on national TV under duress.
Accepted.
And so INEC, in furtherance of its responsibility, decided to set up a panel to investigate.
And then discovered that, well, there are actually issues. And then what next?
And I am not INEC, and so...
No, I know you are not INEC, but I'm saying, why didn't INEC take action?
No, if INEC had discovered that there were infractions, and because I also, mind you, while all of this were going on, this is not, for the fact that before Okorocha went to court, he had actually approached INEC also. He had written letters.
Yeah, of course, accepted.
Those correspondences are steps also taken by INEC. And then also, mind you, you said something, this is novel. INEC also, after concluding that there were indeed infractions, would also had, I also expected that they probably would have approached their legal department for a legal opinion
That's the point.
on the appropriate step to take.
And then take the step without
maybe
delay.
in the course of that legal opinion, Okorocha approaches the court to say...
The reason I'm asking, look, there was ample time before Okorocha approached the court.
No,
of course, there was. We followed. Okorocha first wrote to INEC.
Yes,
there was ample time. After the listen, in the case of Bauchi,
yes,
there was an investigation. Immediately after the investigation, there was an announcement.
Yes.
There was an announcement immediately after.
Yes.
In the other cases where supplementary elections were held, there was an announcement immediately after. But what I'm saying is, in the case of this Imo State, INEC conducted an investigation.
Mind you,
and then waited.
You need to distinguish Bauchi. No, you need to distinguish Bauchi. For Bauchi, the result had not been announced. The final result had not been announced by a returning officer. A winner had not been declared by a returning officer. But in the case of Imo, Okorocha's case is novel.
Now,
because the returning officer actually made a pronouncement premising it on the fact that that pronouncement was made on that duress.
This is my question.
So there are legal issues.
What would have been the appropriate thing for INEC to have done?
The first thing INEC ought to have done is to seek legal interpretation to the next step of action from his legal teams. Because, mind you, it had never happened before. And so if you say you want to go ahead to conduct a supplementary election, and legal issues also will arise, what is the implication of that pronouncement made? Can you conduct election in the light?
When you delay in taking a decision,
mind you,
you
delay,
give room for problems like that.
I agree with you, but the delay you're looking at also might not be, INEC's fault. It might probably comes from or stem from the fact that they also needed consultation.
Let me tell you now, this is the reason why I'm asking all this. Because the impression I get is that, look, it's like INEC discovered, okay, there was an infraction. This man said he declared the result under duress.
Yes.
And then INEC decided to sit and wait for the candidate to go to court. Let the court decide. Listen now. Instead of INEC to take action, INEC decided to wait.
It is not INEC's responsibility, also it's not their duty to approach the court to now begin to ask the court, what do we do?
No, I'm saying instead of INEC to take action, INEC decided to wait for this man to go to court so that the court would make a pronouncement.
Mind you, immediately after the election, parties would go to the tribunal. As I speak to you, there are 4 petitions against that pronouncement that INEC, in spite of the fact that the certificate is still being withheld by INEC, there are 4 petitions against that pronouncement at the election petition tribunal.
Don't you think there's also some danger here that, if a returning officer simply says that he's declaring a result under duress, because we saw the picture that day, we saw the man sitting down, and then, of course, you have the head of the police and the DSS sitting down there with him. Don't you think there's a danger that if for instance, you have, say, a partisan returning officer, which is not impossible, that this returning officer could just go ahead and say,
which is why the institution that is responsible, that appointed that returning officer, did conduct further investigation to actually verify if those allegations were true. And so in the course of, you remember the Rivers issue also. The big issue for me, the big question for me is, you have the police commissioner, you have the DSS.
They were all sitting down there.
And at that point, at the point where the man felt threatened, and for him to have voiced out that he's under duress, that his life, what it means is, he's been threatened to do this. And you have the heads of the agencies that are responsible.
That's a contradiction in
that are responsible for protecting him, seated and do nothing. So that's my worry really in all of this.
It's a big worry
and so also I will understand also INEC's predicament in all of this, the quagmire they find themselves, having to unravel the law and what they should do.
The only problem I have with INEC is that I just think INEC, immediately after conducting that investigation, should have made a pronouncement even before this man went to court. It took about 2 weeks before, it took about 2 weeks before he went to court. So I expected. It's like INEC conducted the investigation, then sat down and waited.
INEC after
instead of making a pronouncement, say you are. I think what INEC should have done was either cancel the results of that election,
Deji,
or say you canceled some part and then you do.
Deji, after investigation, you wouldn't want, because mind you, it is not elections. Elections.
How long does
elections are not concluded at the poll in Nigeria.
But the question is, how long does it take to do consultation?
What I'm saying is, everybody wants to be very careful on the pronouncement they make after election, most especially when matters are the tribunal. And so you want to be very careful. You want to consult all your legal books so that you don't because any words you say might be used against you at the tribunal. And at the end of the day, they say, well, INEC said this. Mind you, you have some people also who are laying claim to that same certificate.
Imagine if this was the presidential election we're talking about and INEC had to wait for that long, you know, and for that long to do consultation. What do you think?
I agree with you that anyway, I had expected, you know, INEC, you know, but that's Nigeria for you. I'm not holding brief for INEC here, but that's Nigeria for you, where we seems to, you know, be laid back when we should be swift. But and so I also, and then if also it took the legal department of INEC 2 weeks to come up with a legal opinion, I think that's also not good enough. I had expected that immediately after investigation, you say, well, we have investigated and this is our conclusion. And for that reason, this election, we're cancelling it. The outcome of the election. We're going to reconduct that election. Or that from what we have, our investigation, from the report we gathered from our field officer, this person actually won. These other figures were inflated and this man was forced to, you know. So I had expected all of that to happen.
Create this kind of situation,
you know, and so, because most especially when INEC also had conducted an investigation and concluded investigation that actually there was, you know, the announcement was made under duress. So what ought to have followed after the investigation ought to be a pronouncement. A definite pronouncement.
A definitive pronouncement immediately.
On it. Like you said, I think INEC also waited, and after, you know, maybe their legal
to see what the other
maybe their legal team couldn't come up with a definite, you know, position on it, and so they folded their hands and said, well, let's wait for them to go to court and let the court make a pronouncement.
The danger is that when you do that, you create room for suspicion.
Yes, I agree with you. When you do that, you give, apart from creating room for suspicion, you also allow a lot of rumors. Because when in the absence of information, rumor thrives, and so when all of this happens, I had expected, you know, a very thorough job. We don't hit the ground running here. We always wait. Yeah, it's always very common to say, well, go to court.
Well, Libros, thank you very much for your contributions, and let's just wait and see how this whole thing is resolved. Well, we'll take another break, and when we come back, we'll be talking something else, not politics this time. On Deji 360, we don't just ask the questions. What is wrong with amending the Constitution the way the National Assembly members have been doing it? We seek answers.
Constitution is constituent.
Our problem is not lack of laws. Our problem is lack of the willpower to implement our laws.
Answers that provide clarity.
While we negotiate, we should try to make it a point that the girls must be complete.
The clarity you need to make informed judgment so that you can make the right decision and take action. People are saying it is you politicians that are responsible for this, that you are the reason why this is happening.
All these dollars that call themselves governors in this country.
I wish we had people like Tony at the National Assembly.
God forbid that I go to join that band.
Deji 360, providing clarity to issues.